All right. Thank you so much. Hello and good morning, everyone. Um, Hopefully you are all here for the Survey123 workshop, because that's what we are going to be doing. My name is Nick Viau, for those of you who don't know me. I work for a company called Allpoints GIS based out of Denver. I'm a GIS specialist and instructor. I've been in the field for about 11 years now, working on with various organizations, mostly focused in the land management, natural resource management, planning, conservation type fields. I've done a lot of work with the U.S. Forest Service, with the BLM, with various land conservation nonprofits. I'm a very strong Esri user. Allpoints is a Esri business partner, so we are an early adopter of Esri technologies. I've been using Survey123 for, probably 5 years now. How long has it even been out? I've been using it for a long time. So yeah, I want to take some time today and just kind of get everyone up to speed. Hopefully that's why you're here, is to kind of get up to speed, get some new info about Survey123. We are going to split this session up into two 2-hour blocks, as you've seen. So right now we're going to go until about 11 o'clock, and then we'll give you all a lunch break for a couple hours, and then we'll start back up at 1 o'clock and go till about 3. This morning I'm going to be going over some of the more basic Survey123 materials, showing you kind of how to get started, the nuts and bolts of really just what it is and how it works and how you can get going with Survey123. And then this afternoon, we'll look at some more advanced examples and also kind of the back end of what do you do with the data, how do you access that, and kind of some of the side on ArcGIS Online. So just a quick idea of what's going on for you there. For those of you that have been in one of my or Allpoints training classes before, you know that I really like to try to keep things open. I try to have an interactive environment. This is normally a workshop that I teach in person, with everyone together in a classroom. So we're definitely adjusting a little bit here to this new format, and I realize that makes it a little more tricky to try to truly interact, but I still want to try to encourage everyone. I like this to be interactive. If you've been in some of my classes before, I often like to say that I think it takes a village to do GIS. There's a million little buttons and options and little techniques you can use for this and that all over GIS, and Survey123 is no different than that. So I think having some interactivity and discussion between us is really helpful. So to the extent possible, like I said, I know this is going to be a little tricky, a little different than normal, but I really want to I really want to encourage you guys to use the chat box. Please feel free to raise your hands. My wonderful, gracious moderator, Nick, will be watching for if you're raising your hands, things like that, trying to keep me apprised of what questions you have. But please do not feel free to raise your hands. I'm happy to let you guys talk and ask some questions, share some insights. Use the chat window. Just please feel free to interact as much as you would like to. So hopefully you all got the email from me. I sent it out last night, maybe around 6 or 7 o'clock. If not, check your email. Whatever email address you registered for the conference with is the one that I got. I sent you all out a PDF of the class book for this workshop. And what is in that class book is handouts of the slides. So every slide that I'm going to show you today is in there. If you'd like to, print that off and take notes on it or whatever, you're free to, or just to have that for reference later. And then towards the end of that PDF class book, you'll see there's also kind of step-by-step instructions for a couple of hands-on exercises for how to use the two different survey building tools. The way I've been kind of working this with this whole pivoting to online workshops is that I've given you guys these exercises that you can complete on your own. And I am going to walk through them kind of for you, kind of give you a demo of how I would go through these exercises. I'll encourage you, if you want to go ahead and try and follow along with me. I might go kind of quick. You may not be able to keep up, but feel free to try to kind of follow along with me as I'm doing these. If we have any extra time at the end of these 2 hours, I'm not going to lie, I have never tried to do this. First time I've done this particular workshop online. So I think I've got it scheduled out pretty well where we have 2 pretty full hours here this morning. But if we end up a little early with some extra time, I'm going to give you guys some time on the back end to work through these on your own and all kind of hang out, and we'll try to make this look more like a normal class session where you guys are all busy working away on the exercise on your own machines. I'm here kind of hanging out to answer questions and facilitate discussion. So we'll hopefully have some time to let you guys kind of turn loose and just have me here to answer your questions. But again, yeah, please feel free to ask questions at any time. Pop in with comments, observations. Everyone's thoughts and opinions are definitely valid and wanted. And with that, I'm going to share my screen. There we go. And sorry here, just playing around with the Zoom to make sure I can see your guys' questions and stuff while I'm presenting. And of course I can't immediately. I see, it's tricky. It hides this little toolbar on you. Okay. Okay. Sorry, everyone. I'm just making sure I can see my presentation and anything that you guys might be typing and trying to talk about at the same time here on both of my screens. There we go. I can see your chat and the question and answers. So yeah, please feel free to use those. Just really quickly before we start, am I sounding all right to everyone? Is this clear? The audio sounding good? Would a few people mind just typing in the chat box if everything sounds good? Okay. All right, sounds like everything's coming through clear. I like to check that before we get going on anything. So yeah, like I said, this is the Survey123 workshop. Hopefully that's what you're here for. We're gonna work around with that kind of creating and using field surveys. So first off, just some definitions. I want to make sure everyone knows exactly what we're talking about here. And I think most of you probably know, what is Survey123? It's been around for several years now. It's been popular even for several years now, gaining popularity all the time. It's a form-centric data collection software, and it allows you to set up your own data gathering surveys. You know, in a lot of workflows, what Survey123 is being used for is to replace paper forms. Various inventory and observation forms have been done in the past using paper, and this you know, makes it immediately digital. There are a lot of other applications for this when you may want to, you know, create surveys to collect data. But one common example is just kind of bringing your organization up into the 21st century technologically by replacing paper-based forms with electronic forms. So there's kind of a four-step process. The first thing you have to do is you have to build your survey, right? Whatever that data set that you need collected is, whatever that form that you need collected is, you have to build that. And there's two ways to do that. We'll see them both today. The first one is the desktop app called Survey123 Connect. And again, if you all got my email last night, you'll see I put a link in there to where you can download the latest version of this from Esri. The Survey123 Connect is a desktop application. It runs on your, you know, on your laptop, desktop computer in order to build the surveys working with Microsoft Excel. So if you all would like to work through those online exercises or hands-on exercises and follow through with me, I encourage you to go ahead and try to find that link and download and install that Survey123 Connect program. The second way you can build a survey is right on the web with no software needed on your computer. From inside ArcGIS Online, you can get to something called the Web Survey Designer. And both of these tools do the same thing. They set up, I mean, essentially you're setting up a field schema with some extra accoutrements on top of it, I guess I'll say. But essentially you're setting up a field schema of what fields need to be in the data table for this data set. And the Connect app is a little more advanced. It allows you to do some more advanced things, some higher level customizations than the Web Survey Designer. And you'll see that there's instances when you would want to use both. After you've built a survey and you're happy with how it looks and all the data that's being collected, the next thing is you obviously have to share that out so that someone besides you can use it. And that's all done using ArcGIS Online. There's a Survey123 kind of area within ArcGIS Online. When you log into your AGOL, you'll see there's a place where you can go to get to a special Survey123 page that shows you all your Survey123 stuff. You know, what surveys you've posted up, how many records have been submitted to each survey and by whom. You can look at all the data. Get at that kind of this afternoon. And then obviously the main point here is to go out and collect data, to actually have your users download the Survey123 app to their mobile phone or their mobile device, whatever that may be. You download an app to your mobile device, you go out in the field, and you start collecting data on whatever it is. You'll see here today, I have a little example where we build a campsite collector form. But this could be used for anything. And then like I kind of got ahead of myself there. The last step is obviously once people have collected data out in the field, you can start to use that data in the ArcGIS Online backend. So the way it works, we're going to start off with looking at the Survey123 Connect app. And this works with something called XLS forms. I'm not a computer software engineer, designer. I don't know the nitty gritty of exactly how that all works in the back end, but I know these XLS forms are a really neat thing that have recently come about, and they're being implemented in a lot of different places where you can kind of use Microsoft Excel to work with other programs. So the way that Survey123 works is you use the Excel sheet to build your survey. Each row in your spreadsheet comes out as one question in your survey. And it also represents one column, one field in your attribute table. So once you have gone through and filled out that Excel form, and you'll see that can be very detailed. I'll show you some different examples of, you can see if I go back one, this Excel form has 3 lines. There's like 6 boxes, plugged in there. And it makes this very simple survey on the right-hand side of the slide. But this can get quite detailed. You can get into hundreds of lines here. I'll show you some examples of some more complex surveys that have a lot more stuff in them. So you can really spend a lot of time in this Excel sheet kind of tweaking and perfecting your survey how the way you want it. Once you've done that though, you can take it and publish it up to ArcGIS Online directly from within the Survey123 Connect program. You do need to have an ArcGIS Online organizational account, and you need to have permissions to publish things. Like a viewer level account, a basic level ArcGIS Online account. Something without permissions to publish content won't work. You need to have permissions to publish content to an organization, which I'm guessing that everyone here has. Again, just this quick look at the second way, the more simple way to build your surveys, this web survey designer. And it's a very, the concept is exactly the same, pulling in questions. Each question is a field in your attribute table. You can have different types of questions. This is just kind of a nice little user interface that works online. It's a little easier than working with the Excel sheet. And you don't have to download any desktop software. But again, your functionality is not quite the same. It's been getting a lot better. Even like a year or 2 ago, the web survey designer, the functionality was really limited compared to what you could do in the desktop Connect app. And over the last year and a half, they've really put a good amount of work into this web survey designer to increase the amount of functionality that you can have here. So you may find that depending on what exactly you're doing, you may want to work mostly with the web survey designer. If you find that you don't have the need or desire to do some of the more advanced things I'll show you that can only be done in the desktop app. Once you publish your survey up to ArcGIS Online or Survey123 Online, those are the same thing there. Don't let my kind of different terminology throw you off. The Survey123 Online is just a special kind of space within your ArcGIS Online that's only related to Survey123. And so the main power here, right? I mean, I think the main power of ArcGIS Online, of our online GIS in general, is the ability to share what you've done out, right? To quickly and easily share your GIS products. In this case, it's data collection surveys, to share those out with different groups of people. And the sharing of Survey123 works the same as everything else on AGOL. You can have it be public, you can have it shared with your organization, or you can create groups. I think commonly you'll probably want to create groups for Survey123s to make sure the right kind of operational teams have access to their pertinent data collection surveys, and that other teams aren't crowded up, by looking at stuff they don't need to. But again, depending on what you're doing, public can be very useful too. A lot of, I know we probably have a lot of representation from local government in the room today. And I know local governments have used, or all levels of governments, have used Survey123. If you share it publicly, you can create different crowdsourcing apps, citizen data collection apps, all kinds of various things you can do to try to elicit some information from the public. So once you've built your survey and you've shared it with some folks on ArcGIS Online, your end users will have to go onto their mobile device. The screenshots here are for an Android phone, just because I use Android phones. Obviously, an iPhone looks slightly different, but it's more or less the same. So you can go into your app store and you can download Survey123. If you just search for Survey123 in whatever app store you have, it's on all the major ones. You should be able to find it. And you can download it and install it. When you open it up, the first thing it wants you to do is to sign in to your AGOL account. Obviously, you just saw that these surveys are shared via ArcGIS Online, so they're shared with particular AGOL accounts. So that's how you have to link to which surveys any end user has access to as you sign into your ArcGIS Online account. And you can see a list of all the surveys that are shared with you. Now, Survey123 is designed specifically as a field application. They very much intend for you to be out in the field somewhere, you know, whatever that means to you, but out in the field somewhere, outside of your office, presumably outside of a Wi-Fi connection, quite possibly even outside of cell service range. So it's presumed that you may be in a no connectivity environment. So the workflow for the mobile app is you have to sign in, and then it will show you a list of all of the surveys that are shared with you on ArcGIS Online. And you have to be connected for this part, have some kind of internet connection. And what you do is you see, like on that right-hand picture there, it'll show you a list of all the surveys on ArcGIS Online that are shared with your username, and you have to download them to your device. And it's not a big download. It doesn't take up a ton of space on your phone. You're really just downloading that form, right? That form schema that you created using either the desktop app or the web builder app. So it's a small amount of data it's going to put on your phone, but it's going to store that form in order to collect the data. And so once that's on your phone, you're ready to start collecting data. And so at first, you'll see here's an example. I just had one survey in this middle picture. I just had one survey downloaded on my phone at the time. You may see, you know, depending on how many surveys your organization has and what's shared with you, you may see a whole list of surveys. But this is everything that's been downloaded to your device and is kind of ready to start collecting data under my surveys versus the download surveys we were looking at just a second ago. And so you click to, you can click on one of your surveys that you want to collect data for. And there's a little button that pops up at the bottom for you to start collecting data. And it's pretty simple and intuitive. I think that's one of the really nice things about Survey123 is it's well set up for non-GIS people who aren't super technical. It's a pretty basic user-friendly interface that's familiar to the vast majority of people at this point. You can click in the box and type in a name, click on one of the radio buttons to choose what type of thing it is. It's all fairly obvious and intuitive to end users, even if they aren't super technical people, which is why I think it works well for a lot of different applications, organization-wide applications, enabling people in different departments who, again, maybe not be super technical, or public engagement apps where you certainly can't count on people being super technical. I think it's well suited to all of those. Like I was saying, this really is meant to be a field app, well suited to offline, no connectivity workflows. So you go through and you fill out your whole survey, and you get to the bottom, and you see this left picture here. You get to the bottom of your survey and you complete your survey of whatever your thing that you're surveying is, and you click to complete it. I'm done with this. And you get the option. You'll see, like in this middle picture, you can either send it now, which would mean that you're connected to something. You have some kind of data connection. You're able to send this data to ArcGIS Online now, or you can choose to send it later. And it just kind of caches it on your phone locally. And you can keep, walking around in the field with no connectivity, and you can survey a bunch of different things out there in the field with no connectivity. And then you can drive back, towards town. And when you get a cell signal, you can upload it. A popular option for a lot of companies who don't want to have overages on their cell phone bills. A lot of companies that, have policies about how much data you're allowed to use on your company phone, things like that. A lot of companies like the workflow of having their people just come back into the office, connect their phone to the Wi-Fi, and then you can upload it once you're connected to the Wi-Fi in order to save paying any cell data charges. So that's a popular workflow as well. And you'll see here, I should have changed the screenshot a little bit. The screenshot on the right, you'll see when there's a survey, you can either collect new data, you've already seen that. You can review the data that you've already sent. So if you hit the Send Now button and you upload it to AGOL, you can review those records that you already sent and edit them after the fact if you think you made a mistake or something. And then if you have hit this Send Later button, there'll actually be a third button over here that says your outbox. And those are the ones that are kind of waiting on your phone to be uploaded. And so you can just click to submit everything that's in your outbox. Leslie has a good question. How does it handle loading the maps? Do you also download the maps offline? So that's a really good question. The way that it works by default is that it does not download any maps. If you are out in the field and you don't have cell service, it's still using the GPS of your phone to pick up your location, right? The whole idea here is that you're collecting the location. So it's still just like all the other offline apps I'm sure you guys are familiar with. Obviously, you all know that you don't need a cell connection to pull a GPS signal. So it's always going to collect the location based on the GPS data that's being pulled from your phone. Or you can, I should mention, you can obviously connect your phone to a more high accuracy receiver. You could grab something like a Trimble R1 or an R2 and connect that up to your cell phone or your tablet. And you can use Survey123 to get really, more highly accurate data, depending on your application. Most people are okay with the accuracy of cell phone GPSs. But again, most of, as I said before, most of my background is in kind of natural resource management, land management. A lot of what I do is, if you're talking about managing a whole national forest, getting down to 5 feet of air doesn't matter to them, but it may matter to you. So just a note there, you can absolutely, just like any other mobile app, you can use Survey123 while your mobile device is connected to a better accuracy GNSS receiver. But back to Leslie's question about what do the maps do? When you download the surveys to your phone, it's not going to download the whole base map, right? That would be huge. It just downloads the form where people can plug in the data points. So if you're disconnected, by default, what you're going to see is the map screen will just be blank. Like on this right-hand screen here where you see the map, that map screen will just be kind of like a blank gray, and it'll still show your location. It'll still show a dot that it's picking up where your location is, but it just shows your dot in the middle of a gray box. There is a way that you can create your own base maps and include them as a part of the survey. It's definitely a more advanced technique, but I will make sure to send you guys out information. You'll see this afternoon when I go through some of the advanced techniques. I'm going to show you a whole bunch of cool advanced stuff you can do. Maybe I'll touch on this one quickly. This is a little more complex workflow, but I'll make sure to send you guys out some information, some help posts and Esri documentation about how you can create your own custom base maps. And basically what it involves is you have to make a map in your ArcGIS desktop and create a tile package out of it. And then you can include that tile package as a part of your survey. And so when people download the survey to their device, they're downloading not only your survey form, but now they download that tile package as well. So then that survey has that tile package it can use as a base map when you're offline. So that can be definitely very helpful. It does blow up the sizes of your surveys when you go and you hit this button to download a survey. A normal Survey123 survey, right? It's just a form. I told you it's a very small amount of data that you're downloading to your phone. It usually takes all of about 5 seconds to download onto your phone because it's very small. When you include a custom base map, you now have that tile package, you know, depending on how big of an area you created that tile package for, how detailed it is. You all know that can get bigger, but it will definitely significantly expand the size of the survey, the amount of data that gets downloaded to your cell phone when you click to download the survey to your phone there. So that's one consideration. But it may be, you know, desirable in a lot of workflows. I can definitely see that. So yes, you can do the maps offline. It is just a touch tricky, but it's possible. So then once one of your end users submits their survey data, however that be, whether they do it while they're in the field or whether they wait till they get back to the office and go on the Wi-Fi, once your end users actually start submitting that data, it gets submitted directly up to the AGOL database. There's no intermediate steps. There's nothing you have to do. It's just, it becomes a part of that hosted feature service. So you'll see a little bit more this afternoon when you as the creator publish that survey to ArcGIS Online, you create a handful of things. You create a form. You can see here, that's the actual Survey123 survey, if you will. It's a form item that's stored in AGOL. And right under that, you'll see it also creates a hosted feature service. And that feature service has a field schema in its table. You can see at the bottom here that is defined by your survey form. Each one of these columns in the attribute table corresponds to one of those survey questions that you set up. And so as soon as someone submits data, you know, if you refresh your ArcGIS Online, or even if you're looking at a map and you just kind of, you know, pan your map around, if someone has submitted a point, as soon as a map redraws, you'll see that new point appears. So that's another nice part about this, is it instantly links to ArcGIS Online, or near instantly, you know, as soon as your people hit submit on their cell phones. So near real-time connection to ArcGIS Online. As soon as your end users submit that data, it shows up. It's inside, you know, this hosted feature layer, and it's immediately available for use to you. The same way you would do anything in AGOL. It's just a normal point layer. There's nothing special about it. There's nothing, you know, different about the way that you use it in AGOL. The only special thing about it is it's being live fed and live updated by your users as they're adding more rows to the table as they're out there in the field collecting forms. But it's just a normal hosted point feature layer. You can add it to a web map, you know, and turn that into a web app. You can download it to your desktop, you know, in various formats and use it there. We can look at the table and do some summary analysis, all that stuff. Everything that you can do with a normal point feature layer on AGOL, you can do with the Survey123 results. So real quickly, we'll see this. There's a few places you can get to it online. You can go to survey123.arcgis.com. You can also, I'm sure some of you have seen this from your little app launcher, your waffle button, whatever you want to call that thing, where you can launch all your apps from the upper right of AGOL. You'll also see the story maps is in there. So there's a few places you can launch it, and you can get to this Survey123 online place where you can see all of your surveys that are that you've published as the creator, that you own. If you go to one of your surveys, you can see some statistics. How many records have been submitted, how many users submitted those records, when was the last time that was submitted. You can see kind of a graph of how many have been submitted through time. You can kind of keep check on your field crews, make sure they're not taking a day off in the middle of the week or something like that. And you can look at some basic data analysis, like what's in the lower right here. You can start to make some basic bar graphs and reports and charts and things out of your data real quickly, just to see how things are going. All right. So I'd like to kind of switch gears now and move into like a live demo session for you and walk through some of these hands-on exercises for you. Before I do, I just want to pause for a second. Any questions, comments, thoughts? All right. Doesn't look like much, so I assume you are all following me then. Please feel free, again, chime in whenever you would like. So the first thing to do, obviously, is to download Survey123. And I've already done that, obviously, but just real quickly, just so you guys can see it. All right, good question. Kevin is asking, is AGOL basically always necessary, or was there an option to work through Excel? So AGOL is necessary. AGOL is the place where Survey123, it's basically the back end. You have to publish your surveys up there, so those forms have to be stored in Survey123, or in ArcGIS Online, I'm sorry. Your forms that you create have to be stored in ArcGIS Online. You can use the Excel, the desktop application. You don't necessarily have to have ArcGIS Online. I guess you could download it and make a survey using the Excel form, but you wouldn't be able to publish it without an AGOL account. So you could, I guess you could, like, someone without an AGOL account could download the desktop Connect app and make a survey and then send that Excel form, because you can just pass the Excel spreadsheets around. So you could send the Excel form to someone who does have an AGOL account, who then could publish it up. That's kind of an odd workflow that I can't think of a great example of why you'd want to do that. Basically, yes, AGOL is necessary. Survey123 is a part of ArcGIS Online. It's a part of the Esri cloud. I know Esri uses a lot of terminology, and sometimes it can be confusing to try to figure out where their products fit in. But Survey123 is a part of AGOL, is the best way I can say it. The survey forms have to be hosted in AGOL. Your end users, when they go to use the survey, they have to log into AGOL. When when your users submit that data, as I just showed you, it gets stored on AGOL. There's no way to send it to anywhere else. It has to be stored on AGOL. So Survey123 is a part of ArcGIS Online. So again, Kevin has a good point. He said that his organization doesn't share a lot of data with the public, as many don't, but we do need our field surveys. So our org doesn't own AGOL, but we still use ArcPro. So if you're using ArcPro, you should have access to AGOL. I know again that we could go into a whole several hours of sessions about Esri licensing and how that all works, and I could put everyone to sleep. But if you're using ArcGIS Pro, you at least to some capacity have ArcGIS Online, depending on how many Pro licenses you have. But you do have access to ArcGIS Online. So you should be able to log in and get at it that way. And it doesn't have to be one-to-one either. I'm not sure if this is something that Esri would love me telling you or not, but you don't have to have one AGOL account for one user. Kind of, shh, don't tell anyone, but you can share the same username and password with multiple people and have multiple people using the same AGOL account. I've done that on a number of occasions and I've never run into issues. Put a little asterisk next to that. Don't tell them I told you that. Don't hold me accountable. But you can have multiple people using the same AGOL account if your organization doesn't have an excess of AGOL licenses. That's definitely one way I've seen kind of a workaround for this. But yeah, short answer, yes, you do need AGOL. So I want to just really quickly, just in case you're having any trouble, I just want to show you how to download it. And I'm just going to type download Survey123 Connect, and it comes right up, top link here. The only tricky part, and so I put this screenshot in the email I sent, is it's not obvious, like, okay, where do you download it from? You have to kind of scroll down here to the bottom, almost all the way to the bottom of this page. And right here is where you can download it. And be sure you download over here, the Survey123 Connect desktop app, and not the field app. The field app is the one that's meant to be downloaded to your mobile device. This is the one that you use in the field to collect the surveys on the field. So the field app is you would go on your mobile device and go to your app store and download that to your mobile device. The Connect desktop app is over here. So just quickly, it's a little, I think it's like 100 megabytes. So it'll take maybe just a second to download for you. But you just want to scroll down to the bottom of this page and find probably this link right here for most of you. And you'll download that and install it. And then once you install it, obviously it will be on your computer and you can open it. And when it opens up, you'll see something that looks like this. Now at first, if you're just opening up Survey123 for the first time, yours will be blank. The only thing you'll have is this button that says New Survey. You can see here, I have a few surveys that I've created, so I have a few in my list, but you may only have just New Survey, and that's fine. One thing I'll encourage you, if you look up here, you can see across the top of the Survey123 Connect, you can go to some tutorials. But we'll want to work on my computer right now. I just want to make you aware, these are pretty nice. Certainly this would be a great next step for some of you if you're, after today's workshop, if you're looking to dig in deeper, there's some good stuff here about how you can just advance topics and different ways of working through. There's also this community tab, which they added I guess maybe like 6 months ago, maybe even a year ago. It hasn't been around that long though. And it's actually kind of neat. You can see here's a fresh question from 37 minutes ago. And it's just a user forum. Quite frankly, it's nothing like that incredibly different or amazing. It's just a little user forum where people ask questions, mostly about kind of advanced things they're trying to do with Survey123. But I've just gotten some really good ideas from here. If you look, this one looks pretty complicated to me, this guy's question, but there's a lot of good stuff you can see just to get ideas about what other people are doing, what other people are trying to do. So it's worth kind of poking around in here every once in a while, and you can see there's some different sections up at the top of the community tab. So I'll leave it at that, but it's worth looking at here because some other people have some good ideas about what they want to do with it. But for the most part, you're going to want to be living here under My Survey Designs. And I'm going to go ahead and click to just create a new survey. And you can see by default, it comes with some templates, advanced and basic. And if you start going through here, there can be a lot more. There's like samples that Esri has. This is a nice place here too. Like if you want to, I'll show you this afternoon about some ways we can mess with the appearance, but here's a whole little form they have to kind of a tutorial to show you how you can mess with the appearances. Or if you want to do an auto-complete field, I'll show you what that is. A barcode scanner, that's actually, I've never tried to create that one. But for the most part, you're going to want to be up here, and I always do advanced. Under templates, there's basic and there's advanced. And obviously all the stuff from the basic is in the advanced, and the advanced just has some more. So I always start with the advanced. And you click Create Survey. And what it's going to do is it's going to open up two windows here. I'll try to stack these side by side so they're somehow coherent. So this is Survey123 Connect. There's two windows. Like I was saying earlier, it uses this back-end technology called XLS Forms to create the link between the Excel spreadsheet and the survey that you're seeing. And so over here in the Excel sheet, like I was saying, every one row in your Excel sheet represents one question in your survey. And you can see here, they start off with one quick example, a text question that's named example. And you can see over here, there's a question that's called example, and it's a text box I can type text into. Really nice. They've worked in a lot of kind of help tips throughout the Connect program here. You'll see as I click across, it gives you just kind of a little pop-up box with some information about what it wants in most of these. So the first one here is, what type of field do you want? Some information about the name that you can type in, what label you can type in. You can see as I click across, and as I go across, you see there actually are a lot of columns here that you can use to control some more advanced stuff. But as you click across here, it gives you some nice little info boxes about, what is this? What does required mean? And obviously that's pretty obvious. Is this field required? But it tells you, type in yes to make this field required. So there's a lot of little nice help tips and hints like that kind of buried into the program. So I want to expand a little bit here because what I want to show you is the tabs down here at the bottom. You see that there's 4 tabs in the Survey123 Excel window here. And the main tab is the survey tab. This is where you create your survey. This is definitely like the home where most of your stuff goes on, is in this survey tab. There's also the choices tab. And this is where you can create pick lists. right? If you want to have any of your questions be a drop down or a radio button or anything where you have a list of, like a pick list for an answer to your question, and you set those up here. And you'll see it comes kind of pre-populated with 2 common pick lists. There's a yes, no, and then there's like a rating, a 1 to 5 star rating, and they just put those in there by default. I don't know. And we'll learn how to work with these in a little bit. You can see this is where you go to set up kind of a pick list. The third one is the settings tab. And this is definitely advanced. I don't even really want to touch on this right now. You can do some more advanced things to control like the survey level settings to change things at the survey level here. Yeah, Karen is asking about if you want to add the pick list, you just go below the default and type your list. Yes, that's exactly right, Karen. We'll see in just a second. You kind of type in, you have to type in the name of the list over here in the A column, and that's what groups them all together. And then you type what goes in your list over here. And we'll get to that in just a second. So that's enough on the settings tab for now. Again, this is advanced stuff. And then there's this last one that's called types. Now, I don't know why they call it types. I feel like they should call it more like info or FAQ or something. You don't do anything in this tab. This is purely informational. It's reference information. And you can go through here and it tells you all the different field types, for instance. Like over here, if we go back to our survey tab, our main survey, you can see the first thing we have to set for every question is what type of question is it, right? Do we want to store an integer, a decimal, a text? Do we want to have people select one from a list, have multiple from a list, a date, some geometry fields, so different types of fields that we can add here. And here it just goes through and kind of explains what each one of those is. Obviously an integer is a whole number, a decimal is a decimal input. It just goes through and explains some of these things to you. That required field, we saw that, just a real simple explanation. Leave blank if the field is not required, or type yes if you want it to be required. Appearance, we'll get into that. The appearance you can use to kind of style it and make your survey look different on the phone at the end. And there's a bunch of different things you can type into that appearance box. And here's just an overview of what all of those are. So you can go down through here and this is just a good resource tab to kind of explain what everything that's going on is as you go through all of these columns in that first survey tab. This just helps you to know what's going on, basically. So definitely worthwhile to kind of look through here because it shows you kind of what's going on. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just create a simple survey here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this example question that they put in here. I'm just going to delete that. And you'll see if I hit save, you see my sheet updates over here. It's actually going to give me an error because I don't have anything. It doesn't like having an empty survey. And you'll see that's actually nice. If you make a mistake over here in your Excel form, it's pretty good about when you hit save, or you can hit update over here. It'll do the same thing. It's going to reload whatever's in your Excel form into the survey box. And it's pretty good about giving you those error messages about what's going on. It's actually pretty decent at giving you some pretty detailed, meaningful error messages that you can actually make sense of pretty quickly and easily. So I'm just going to build a real quick survey here. And this survey, it's just to inventory buildings like walking down Main Street. It's a real simple one. Normally, when I teach this class in person, part of it is that we all build a survey, and then at the end of class, we go outside for a short little walking trip around wherever building we're in. And I like to just let people have some time to play around with the Field app, and we walk down the street and collect some info about buildings. Unfortunately, obviously, we're not going to be able to do that today together. But just so you know why I'm kind of choosing to build a little building survey. So the first data point I want to have in my survey is just to collect the name of the feature. And so that is going to be a type of text. And you'll see a lot of Survey123, they have a nice little drop down for you too, so you can choose what kind of field you want. And you can see, again, there's a lot of field types here. There's some of these that are even so new that I'm not even quite sure what they do. But this first one, we just want it to be a text field, just to store the name of the feature. Under the name field, this is going to be the name of the field in your database, right? And we all know about some of the rules about field names in GIS databases. We don't want any spaces or special characters, things like that. So for this one, I'm going to type feature name with no space in it, because that's going to end up being the name of my field in my table. And then over here, the label is your field alias. So this is what it'll actually show up as in the question. So I'm just going to type, again, feature name, but with a space in it. You can type a little hint, like when you hover over the question, it'll give you a little pop-up box, kind of like this little hint box that you're looking at. Constraint you can use to limit the number of values. Like if, for instance, you wanted someone to plug in like a percentage, if there was a field where you wanted someone to plug in a percentage, you could constrain that to be between 0 and 100, or whatever that is. But you can make sure, you know, if they type in a number that's not reasonable, if you're looking for a percentage and someone types in 400, you can have it check that and say, no, that's not a valid value, something like that. And for this first one, I'm going to go over here to column G, which is required. And I'm going to make this required. Every time someone collects a feature in this survey, it needs to have a name. I don't want to have any data points where I don't know the name of the feature. And you can see that's simple. You can just type yes. There's also actually a drop down that also just gives you the options of blank or yes, either way. And so when you do this, it won't let you submit the survey. If you are filling out the survey on your phone and you go to click submit at the bottom, that little submit survey button is grayed out, and it tells you, you know, there's a required field that's not filled out. So it physically won't let people submit that data into the database unless they've filled that out. And right next to required, you can type a required message that'll pop up, you know, you must type a feature name, something like that. And if I hit save, you'll see my form updates. And the more questions you have, the longer that takes. And you can see, I mean, I just have one question so far, but it's the feature name. And it's got a little red asterisk to indicate that it's required. And I can type in anything I want in here. So pretty simple. So for my next question, I want to create something that stores the feature type. You know, what type of building is this? And that I want to create a pick list. And so for that pick list, I'm going to go over here to my choices tab. I'm going to make a new pick list. You can leave these or not. I usually leave the yes, no, because I use that one, the 1 to 5 star ratings. I never use that. I've never found a reason for that. So I usually delete it, but obviously you can feel free to leave it in there if you want. So first off, in order to create a list, this list name is just kind of the linking feature. Everything that has the same value in the list name goes into the same list. So this list is going to be for the type of feature. So I'm just going to call it feature type. And again, for this, the list name here, you want like no special characters, no spaces, that type of stuff. And so the first type of feature in my list that I want to create here, again, this is just, you know, something that I made up, but the first type is I wanted to be able to say this is a government building. Government. And again, over here, the name should be typed without any spaces, special characters, that type of thing. And the label can have it in there. So I'm going to type government building with no space, no special characters. And then for the label, which is what will actually show up in the survey, I'll go ahead and throw in an apostrophe and a space to make it look a little nicer. But yeah, don't use spaces, special characters, that type of deal here. And then the label. You can go ahead and do that. For this particular list, I tried to keep it pretty simple, but we have 5 types of features. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to expand this feature type down 4 more rows. And that's just saying that these 5 rows are all on the same list. The choices I put in these 5 rows are all going to show up and they're going to be a part of the same list called feature type. And you can use the list multiple times. If you had multiple questions in your survey where you wanted to use the same pick list, you certainly can do that. This one might not be as useful, but something like yes, no, you might have, you know, a whole bunch of yes, no questions in your survey list, and you don't have to have a bunch of yes, no list names. You can reuse this same list over and over again. So quickly, I'm just going to, the other types of features that I kind of put in here were like a cultural or a community facility. A park. Business spelled correctly, or other. And I'll just quickly copy these and I'll make only one of these needs a little cleaning up. I'll put some spaces in here, cultural / community facility. These other ones are probably all right. Other point of interest, maybe. Now, if I save this, nothing immediately is going to happen in my form over here because I haven't created a new question yet. But if, for instance, like, let's say I forgot to type in a name right here, I left this square blank. If I hit save, it should throw me an error. And you see on the choices sheet, there is an option with no name. And it even tells me from the list called feature type, there's an option with no name. So that's a pretty good error message, I think. That pretty well leads me to what I need to do. Oh, in my feature type, yep, there's something with no name. So let's fix that. So you can see kind of that nice error reporting. So here's our list. What we need to remember here is the name that we gave this list, which is feature type. We go back over into our survey tab. And we'll create a new type of question. And for this one, I only want people to be able to select one, right? The building is not going to be a park and a business, probably. It's not going to be a cultural facility and a government building. I know there's instances where that could be true, but for the sake of example, we're going to say that we only want people to be able to pick one option, as opposed to you can have pick multiple, right? So right here, you can select one from a list where that presents as like a radio button. You just have to check one of them, or there is possible, you know, like a check on all that apply type scenario where you can present people with a list that you can select multiple. For this one, I want to select one. I just want them to select one thing. And then what you have to do, and this was a little confusing me at first, so it says select one, and it has list name in square brackets. And it always seemed really intuitive to me that you would just plug in the list name between the square brackets, right? But what you actually have to do is you delete the square brackets too. You just type in the name of that list. So select_1 and then a space, and then you type the name of your list, which for us right now is feature type. And it's always going to give you this error when you do a select one or a select multiple. There's something about the back end programming where it's always going to give you this funny little error box. And it says, please select yes if you are using a select one or select multiple XLS form type. We are using a select one type, so I'm just going to select yes, and that's all good. And for this question, we're going to call this one the feature type. Again, making sure there's no spaces, special characters, things in that field name. And then over here where we're typing the field alias or the label, you can put in what you want. And we'll also make this one required. And now if we hit save, or if we go over here and we hit update, actually, I wonder if it updates if I haven't saved. Oh. Okay, so you do need to save it first because it gave me that error list, that error message. I had an empty choice over here, and that's not true anymore. So you do have to save it. And there you go. You can see we now have that second question in there. People can type the feature name, but then they can also click and look at the feature type. One super fast thing I'll show you, there's neat, you can use, if we go over to our feature type question that we did, and we scroll over, you can get to this appearance column, and this can be used, I'll show you some more of this afternoon. I just want to really quickly touch on this. This can be pretty powerful in how your survey looks. And there's different appearances that apply to different question types. So there's some good documentation. I'll send you out some information about which ones apply to which things. Like this is a text field, basically. We're selecting one from a list of text. So like the month, year wouldn't really apply. Week number wouldn't apply. Not all of these apply. Only some of the appearances apply to different field types. But for a select question, select one or select multiple, you can do is it minimal or is it compact? I guess I'll very briefly touch on this, but if you set the appearance to compact, you'll see it's going to change. It's not going to look quite the same. We'll give that a second. And you'll see now it kind of spreads out your radio buttons horizontally to try to just manage space. You'll see a lot of this comes down to the fact you have to think about that most of your users are going to be doing this on probably a cell phone. You only have whatever 5 inches by 3 inches there or something. You don't have a ton of screen real estate. The other one, this one's all right. Actually, the other one I wanted to show you, compact, I guess it is minimal. If you change appearance to minimal, it'll put these into a drop-down list, which I use a lot. I think that's nicer than the radio buttons. And then you can see here, it puts it into a little drop-down list for you. Which I think that's nicer personally, so I like to use that one. There's a lot of different ways we can mess with this. I'll show you some of that this afternoon, but I just wanted to touch on that. Now I want to create a third survey question. And this one is going to be for the owner type, whether it's a publicly owned building or a privately owned building. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go make a new choice list. I'm going to call my new choice list owner type. And this one's just going to have 2 choices in it, public or private. Make sure to fill in our names and our labels. And now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to add another select one question, right? We don't want them to be able to check that it's both publicly and privately owned, although I'm sure somewhere in America there are buildings that applies to, but again, we want to delete the square brackets. That's a big one. It really seems intuitive to try to type it in between the square brackets, but that won't work. So select one from owner type. And you have to get these exactly right, right? If you accidentally typed a space here, or if you had a typo, it wouldn't pick it up, right? Just syntax stuff. And again, it's going to throw me this little error every time I do a select one or select multiple question. You can just click yes. And now we'll give our field a name. Remember, no spaces, special characters, that type of stuff. Owner name. And then I'll give it the field alias where I'll just put a space. Or owner type, sorry, this isn't the owner name, this is the owner type. This one we'll leave it not required just for the heck of it. And I'll save the form in Excel and it'll convert over here. And you'll see now we have this owner type public and private. And because I have my feature type one, I set that minimal appearance. I didn't set that here. You see my feature type shows up as a drop down and the owner type just lists the radio buttons out. And now I want to show you something that's neat. I want to create a fourth question, and we're going to have this question be dependent on the answer to the third question. So if the end user on their mobile device plugs in that this is a public building, we're going to ask them a follow-up question. What kind of public building? Like, what's the government owner type? Is it a federal building, a state building, or a local building? Just as an example here. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to need to create another pick list for that, for what type of government owner owns the building. So I'm going to go back to my choices. I'm going to create another pick list. You don't have to, I know I'm leaving blank rows between my lists. You don't have to do that. I just do it to visually break it up. So I just, kind of lists are grouped together. But that's not necessary. You can type in every single row. This just is easier to look at for me. So I'm going to create another list and we're just going to make one for the type of government owner. So I'll just call it gov type. And there's going to be 3 options in this pick list. So I'll drag down to 3 rows. Our 3 options are going to be fed, state, or local. And again, I know this is very highly simplified. I'm just doing a simple example here. And we'll copy all those over. Those are nice labels as they are. Back over in our survey tab, our main tab. I'm going to create a question for that government owner type. And it will be, again, a select one. We don't want to be able to check off that it's a federal and a state building, for instance. And we'll call this one gov owner type. And I'll make my label a little prettier. And this one we definitely don't want to make required, because in a second here we're going to show you it's going to be dependent. If the user chooses private, they're not even going to get an answer. They're not even going to get the opportunity to answer this question. So we don't want to set this one as required, because then that creates kind of a logical hole in our survey, where if the user selects a private ownership, they don't even get the opportunity to try to answer the government owner type. So if this one was required, that could throw a loop in your data workflow there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go for this owner type, where again, what we want to do is we want to, if the user from the survey selects public, we want this question to show up. What kind of public building? Federal government, federal, state, local. If it's private, we want this question to they don't see this question at all. So the way that we can do this is in our row for this question for government owner type. If we scroll over a little ways here to the L column, relevant. And if you quickly read through the box, again, I think these little boxes are really nice, just to remind you of what you're doing at every step. Gives you the ability to skip questions or make additional questions appear based on the response to a previous question. So what we're going to type in here, and this is where there is a little bit of syntax involved with Survey123, but luckily I think it's really well documented. Some of the resources I'll send out to you guys after class, you'll see it's pretty well documented. Some of this different syntax that you have to use. But for this particular one, the syntax is a $, and then curly brackets, and then inside the curly brackets, you have to type the name of the question that you want to be dependent on out of the name field here, out of the B column. So we want to look at the owner type. So I'm going to type that right there in between the curly brackets. $, curly brackets, owner type is equal to, and then you have to use quotes because that pick list we set up it gets stored as a text. So you have to use single quotes, and I'll put public. And what you type in here in between the single quotes has to match something in here, right? If I type anything besides public or private, even with a capital, that has to be the same. You have to keep track of that. So you have to keep track of that capital P. So make sure that's the same right there. If you put owner type equals, if I typed anything else, anything besides public or private capital P, this would make this totally invalid. This question would never show up, right? Because we have the pick list already set up before. Our owner type can only be equal to public or private capital P. That's the only option that the user has. They don't have the ability to type their own thing in. They just have the choice to select one radio button or the other for public or private. So I want to make sure that we remember that here when we're typing this in. But that's under this relevant column. What makes this field relevant to see? And if we click save, again, our form updates. Oh, and you see I made a mistake here. Row 5, list name is not in the choices sheet. And you see over here, I didn't type in the name of my list. It still says select one list name. So let's go back over to the choices. I called that field gov type. So we got to plug that in right here. And remember, you delete the square brackets. Make sure we plug in that list name for gov type. We get this error every time we're doing a select from a list question, so we can just click yes. We'll save it. All right, this looks better. We have our feature name. We have our feature type in our drop-down list. We have public versus private. And you'll see if I choose public ownership, they get this follow-up question. What kind of public owner is it? If I choose private ownership, they don't even see that question. So this is really a neat technique with Survey123, like versus paper forms, other workflows, is you can set it up so people don't ever even see questions that they don't need to see. Through your logical workflow, whatever your workflow is, if there's questions that based on a certain scenario, if it's a private building, it cannot have a public ownership type. So you can just keep people from ever seeing that, ever having to waste their time and, few seconds of thought on what's going on. Do I need to fill this out? Do I need to not? You can just completely breeze over that and just simplify things for people all the more. I'll show you this afternoon, how you can do something even cooler, you can kind of take this a step further and do something called cascading selects, which is where not only can you make another question appear, but you can actually change what's in the pick list. You can have the pick list change based on the answer to a previous question as well. So that's pretty neat. Like if maybe we had wanted to list out a different types of private owners. I know that's weird, maybe, I don't know, individual or business or something, but different types of private owners. We could have this pick list down here change if we had, depending on what we'd selected up there. So that's another cool thing I'll show you this afternoon. Last thing, we have a pretty nice looking survey here, at least, it's for a simple example. Obviously, most of the surveys you build are going to be probably more complex than this. But as far as a real basic, simple survey for purposes of example, we got something that's looking pretty good. There's a few more things that you want to do. I recommend for every single survey, you should collect a point, right? You don't necessarily have to do this. Survey123 can be used non-spatially. You can use this to just have people fill out forms and populate it into a spreadsheet, basically a table on AGOL, and you can work with it as a tabular data set. You don't necessarily have to have spatial data. I'm sure there are some workflows where that's desirable. To me, Survey123 is a part of ArcGIS. It's a part of the geographic information system. It's meant to be spatial. It's meant to have spatial data in it. So my recommendation is you should always add in that point information, the location information. Again, feel free to argue with me. If you have your own scenarios where you can think of somewhere where you would want a non-spatial one, I'd be happy to hear some of those examples. But to me, it seems pretty necessary, I guess, to make sure that we're including that. This feature that we're collecting information about, where is it? That's of importance here. And so the way you can do this, traditionally, through kind of a normal Survey123 workflow, is you would collect a point. And I'll show you this afternoon, there are ways, this is a more recent development where you can actually collect lines and polygons as well. But for a basic Survey123, kind of the most common use, certainly the original design, the original intended use, is to just have a single point. It's very useful. It's very much, that's where Survey123 was born out of, was kind of point-based inspections, going to look at the health of the trees in the park, going to, look at, do health inspections on restaurants. It's meant for like a site inspection where you are filling out some information about a specific site. So you want to kind of do a point. And the way that you do that is you have to add a question into your survey. Specifically, it's not in there automatically. I think that gets some people, is that they think it's just in there automatically, and it's not. You have to explicitly add in that you want to collect the point as its own question. And if we go over here in our survey, you'll see in our drop down, we have the choice of geo point, and that's going to be a geographic point. A geo trace would allow you to do a line, and a geo shape would allow you to collect a polygon. It's not bad, the interface for it. If you do a line or a polygon, it has people like click on the map, and it tells you to like basically walk the line or walk the perimeter of the polygon you're trying to track out. So geotrace and geoshape would be your lines and your polygons. For now, we'll stick with just kind of a simple example of a standard workflow, and we'll leave it at a point. You can have multiple geo points. That's something a lot of people are interested in. There are a lot of different workflow scenarios where you may actually want to collect 2 locations, 3 locations with each survey, and you can do that too. That's something I can show you this afternoon. There's kind of a way that you can trick it. If you go way down here at the end, where is it, column U, bind Esri field type, and this is definitely a more advanced topic, but you can use this field to kind of trick Survey123 into allowing you to have multiple, because by default, the way it was originally programmed, the way it's still the back end works is it only wants you to have one, either a point, a line, or a polygon. It only wants to let you have one location for each row in your database. But there's a way that we can, like I said, kind of trick it to do that, and I can show you that too. So for now, we'll do a GeoPoint. This one, I always just call it location. I don't know, come up with a better name if you want, but I always just call it location. And this one should definitely be required. And now you'll see if we save and our form updates. You'll see now down at the bottom of our form, we have this location field. And right now it gives me an error, position source access. And that's just because I'm doing this on my laptop, right? And my laptop doesn't have an internal GPS. It's not set up the same way that phones and mobile devices are, with an internal GPS and location services enabled so that my laptop always knows where it is. When you do this on your phone or mobile device, you'll actually see a map here, and you'll see a nice little pin, at the location where it's picking you up at. So you won't see this on your mobile device. What you can do, regardless, either on your mobile device or here, is you can, on the mobile device, it actually shows you a map window, and you can click on the map. Here, it doesn't even do that because it doesn't know where I am at all. You can, if you want to, and this is something you may or may not want to expose your users to. You may not, there are a lot of cases where you may not want your users to be able to change their location. You may want to pick this up like in the background without your users even ever really knowing about it. So that they don't have the option to change their location, especially with a lot of like public reporting, citizen crowdsourcing type apps. You may not want the public to be able to change it. So there's ways you can hide questions too, and you can make this kind of invisible to the user. But the one thing I want to show you, if you do this, let's say the GPS in your cell phone's a little bit off, and you open up the thing and it puts the pin over here, and you're saying, oh, I'm actually not at this building. I'm at this building over here. You can kind of click, and it's a little weird. That's why I want to show you this. You don't click and drag the pin. The pin's always at the center of the map, and you click and drag the map underneath the pin. So that's all I want to show you. That's just a little thing that gets a lot of people. They try to grab the pin and move it around, and it's what's going on. You actually have to drag the map underneath the pin. And that's fine, we'll leave it. And of course, Esri being Esri-centric, if you don't have any any location information, it defaults to take you to the Esri Redlands campus. That's fine for our purposes here. We'll say that we're there. And now the last thing I want to add into this quick, simple survey, and this is one that's very commonly used. You probably want to put in almost all your surveys, I would think. This is a really useful one. And that's the ability for the user to capture a picture or pictures that go with this survey. And so I'm going to add another field. And this one is going to be an image right there. And this one you can call what you want. I usually just call it like take a picture. And I'll click save. And my Survey123 form will update. And now you can see down here, underneath location, it gives you the option to take a picture. That's what they're going to want to do most of the time. You take a picture, and this will, I'm actually curious what it'll do on my computer. Oh, it goes to my webcam. Okay. On your phone, if you take a picture, obviously it'll open up your camera app. It'll move you into your phone's camera app, like your normal camera app. So you can do all the normal things you do with your phone's camera app. You know, if you wanted to do a landscape photo or apply a filter, you know, I don't know what all of your various camera apps on your phones do, but it'll open up the default camera app that you have on your phone, the one that you're used to using. You can take a picture and then it'll push you back into Survey123. You can also, if you want less common, if you want to upload an image, if you took a picture before and you want to grab an image that's already somewhere on your mobile device, you can do that too. So for the sake of time and interest, let's just say that I wanted to, this was done, I'm done, this survey looks good to me. I want to publish this up. Over here on the left, you can see there's a publish button. And it's going to give you this warning. And basically what this is about, if you guys think about this, you're all GIS professionals, you know, what we're doing here in this Excel form is we're setting up a table schema, right? We're setting up the schema of our attribute table. And so basically what this warning right here is saying is that if you change your Excel sheet, if you change the schema of that table and you try to re-upload, if your old data you collected in the old schema doesn't match your new schema, your updated schema, you might lose some data. So basically what I tell people this means is that you want to have this right. I'll close that for a second. This right here, you want to have it looking as close to final as you can. I encourage people to maybe, you know, share this with your end user groups. You know, if you're making this app for your field inspections team, whatever they are, you know, maybe pull in the leader of that crew and a couple people off that crew and show them it right here and say, is this what you guys need? Does this fit your needs? How can we change this? Maybe do some vetting of this before you actually publish it, because it is kind of a pain if you publish it up and then your group comes back and says, well, hey, could you actually change this government owner type list? You know, we'd like to see more state level. We'd like to be able to block out whether it's the state DOT or the State Department of Natural Resources, or, you know, whatever it might be. It's kind of, it can be a pain if your users come back to you and say, hey, could you tweak this list? Could we add one more question for a feature subtype or something like that? So I definitely encourage you to, when it's in this stage on your desktop still before you publish it, show it, you know, share it as much as you can with your intended end users to make sure that this actually fits the needs, so that you don't have to try to go back in and edit this after the fact. Assuming you've done that, you showed this to your crew leaders and some of your crew folks, and they said, yep, this is great. This is exactly what we need. This looks awesome. You can publish it, and it'll give you this warning right here, and you can still click to publish the survey. And this one, I actually neglected to give it a name. I forgot to, at the very beginning, give it a name. So it's just called My Survey and Form 2. While this is publishing, Leslie had a good question. If you do need to adjust the survey, how does it get pushed out to updates on people's phones? So what will happen, Leslie, is when you get to, back in my PowerPoint here, when you get to this screen, not even this one, right here where you're looking at your surveys on your phone, and you may have multiple of this one on my phone, I only had one. But it'll give you, I forget exactly what it looks like. It gives you, it's like a little, maybe like a checkbox, or it throws a little icon, I believe, on top of the name of this survey to show you that it has updates. And it kind of forces you to re-download it. If I'm remembering this correctly, if the version of the survey you have downloaded on your phone is different than the one that's on AGOL, when you go to hit this collect button, it actually won't let you. It'll lead you through an automated process where it re-downloads the survey to your phone, the updated newest version. So it, oh, what if you are offline? Ooh, yeah, that's a good one, Leslie. If you're offline, that would be a problem. If you had some field crews out in the field who were working offline, collecting surveys, you know, offline, and at the same time you were editing the survey online, republishing it, re-uploading this schema, it could be all right. So like if you were to just add more, right, your crews out in the field are only collecting these 6 questions. If you don't change these, that'll be okay, right? They're collecting these 6 questions and you're not changing the schema for these 6 questions. So they're out there trucking around the field and collecting data for these 6 questions. That would still work, I believe, because when they try to push it to the database, it's still going to match. If you added things to the bottom while they're offline, they wouldn't see these because they're offline and they haven't downloaded the new survey yet. So you'd be missing out on that information. If you change one of these, like if you change one of your pick lists, you could really mess it up to where when they try to submit that data back to the database, it'll throw an error that the data that's on their phone does not match the schema for what is up on ArcGIS Online. Generally, I would just say avoid that. Do the very best you can to make sure that your survey right here is 100% before you publish it up. And if you do need to make updates, you know, schedule that around times when your crews aren't out in the field working. Maybe save it till the last thing in the day, you know, wait till all your field crews have come back from the field, they're back in the office about ready to go home, and maybe push your updates out at 5 o'clock, 5:30 something. But you do want to think about that, the fact that you're controlling this field schema, this data schema on AGOL, and people are trying to push data into that. So there can be some conflicts there. Generally, yeah, that's what I would just recommend is don't. If you have field crews who are out offline currently right now working. Yeah, I would generally try to avoid doing that if you can. Keep communication good between your users, your field crew leaders. Hey, I'm going to be updating the survey tonight. You know, make sure that all your people, before you go out in the field tomorrow, make sure everyone grabs the newest version of the survey. You know, when you guys are still at the office, when you're still in town, when you still have Wi-Fi, make sure all the field crew people go on their phone and download the newest update that I'm going to push out. I'll click OK. Publishing is completed. And just real quickly, if I open up my ArcGIS Online, I go to my content, you'll see it pushed 3 new layers up for me here. That's what actually hitting that publish button, what it actually did was it created these 3 things. It uploaded the form, that actual schema. It uploaded a hosted feature layer, which right now is empty because I haven't collected any features yet. So right now it's empty. And it also makes a little web map for you. It just throws that feature layer into a web map for you. And if I started collecting data on the phone, you would see something show up here. You can also just quickly go over here under the app launcher, your little waffle button. If I go to Survey123, you'll see here the first one that shows up is that new one I just published, Form 2. You can see it has 0 records in it. But if I click on this, you can see it tells me it's not shared, which usually is not going to be the case that you want. Usually you're going to want to share it with people. Maybe you do have surveys that you just want for yourself, but. Good question. My friend Mr. Sam Limerick asks, can you add in rows for dates of initial point gathering plus dates for any subsequent edits? That's a really good question, Sam. So what I didn't show you, one type of question, you'll add this in your next one, I believe, is you can add a date. And one thing you can do with the date is if we go over here, you can set the default, for your date. And there's a few things you can do on this default column, but the one I use it with dates probably more often than anything else. And you can just type now with 2 parentheses after it, and that'll make it default to now. And then you might even combine that with, where is it? There's a field here somewhere called hidden, or something close to hidden, where you can, or maybe that's in the appearance field. There's a place where you can, it might be in the appearance field. I'm forgetting off the top of my head right now. There is a way that you can, is it hide input? Let's look under our types tab to see what it tells us. I'll have to look at that, refresh myself on exactly where you do that. I thought it was one of the fields that's in here. But there's a way that you, like I was telling you before, you can hide fields from the user. So maybe you create a date that the user can't edit, and that gets stored the first time. And then you could create a second date field for like revisited date or something like that. You'd have to figure out exactly how that workflow would work best in your scenario, but I imagine you could do it using a combination of multiple date fields, you know, maybe initial capture date and, you know, re-inspected date or something like that. You could have a whole bunch of them in here if you really were concerned about that. You could have 4 or 5, you know, last date visited, last date visited. Oops. So maybe when they initially capture it, you have it set to now. But yeah, I think you could definitely work out that workflow. I think you'd want to use a combination of multiple date fields as well as hiding some of them. Yeah, and Caitlin mentioned, you know, couldn't use the tracking user date stuff. There's in a lot of collector apps. So with Survey123, you do get every survey submission, every time someone completes the survey and adds another row into your table here, your hosted feature layer. It will tell you who that user was, but it doesn't automatically collect the date right off the bat in a way that's easily accessible. So you do want to, that is one that I add into most of mine, is you do want to have that date field in there and add that in there kind of explicitly, because it won't, at least in an easy way within the data that's accessible to you, it won't show you exactly where that date is unless you add the date field in. So real quickly, we're up at about 10 minutes here. So I'm gonna just breeze through showing you some of the web designer quickly. I encourage you all to go back in and look at these hands-on exercises and work through them. You know, feel free to, I'll make sure everyone has my contact info. You should, because I sent you out an email earlier, but I just want to make sure everyone has my contact info so you guys can work through these on your own time over the coming days and weeks and ask questions about those, but I want to encourage you to work through these. So I'm just going to real quickly show you kind of the, oh, and that took me back to like their marketing homepage. I don't want that. Let's go back to just opening it up. Yeah, let's quickly show you, kind of breeze you through this online web survey designer, because if you understand the Connect, you'll see that this web survey designer is super intuitive. It's really quick and easy once you've figured out and that's why I do it in that order. Once you figure out the Connect desktop app, this is a breeze. And the first thing you do if you create a new survey, it'll ask you if you want to use the web designer or the desktop app. And we want to use the web designer here. And we'll type in a name. Let's call it Nick's Elevations Survey. In AGOL, you always have to give things tags to try to find it. I'll just type X for now, and you should probably give it a summary. Again, I'll skip over that for now. And it takes a minute to create all those items. And it opens up with something that looks like this. And you can see this is very much the same as the desktop app, just simpler. We have all those different types of questions we were kind of plugging in, and they're all listed over here. And you can just kind of drag and drop. And the example I have you working through here is creating like a dispersed campsite survey. I'll just work through a few of these here so you can kind of see. Like, here's your pick one, pick a single choice from a list. We did a bunch of those in the desktop app. And I'm dragging and I'm holding my mouse and just dragging it over here. And then when you light up your mouse button, it adds it in. And you can see it adds it in. It's blank and there's nothing in it. And over here on the right-hand side, it gives you some options for that. If you click outside of the question, it gives you the option to drag new questions in. If you click on that question, highlight it, it lets you kind of update that. So the first one that I have you go through in the exercise is it's for like the size of the campsite. And this is where you can see it doesn't give you the choice to do a label and a field name. You can type nice things with spaces and stuff into this label, and I believe it'll go back through and kind of simplify that for you. It'll get rid of the spaces automatically in your field name. Here's where you can set up your pick lists in the online. And for now, you'll see the exercise is more detailed than this, but just for sake of time, we'll just type small, medium, large. And like if I wanted to do a pick list with just 2 items in it, I could get rid of the last one. I can add additional choices. Large, X, large, for instance. You can also allow them to kind of type in their own if you want. This is where you can set some of that appearance stuff we were looking at, whether it shows up vertically or horizontally, or using that kind of compact style. You have a few options. You have more options than this in the Connect box, the desktop app, but it does give you a few options here. You can make it required. Cache is kind of nice. I forgot this. Yeah, you can kind of have it remember, and then the next time they fill out a question, it'll default to that. So like, for instance, if you were doing a survey, maybe you had like some forestry crews who are going out doing surveys of trees, and you know that in the area they're going, there's one dominant tree species. You know, they might come across 4 or 5 different kinds of trees, but by and large, they're all going to be, you know, this one type of, it's all going to be lodgepole pine, for instance. Maybe you're in, you know, whatever, somewhere in the Colorado Rockies, and you know that it's going to mostly be lodgepole pine. You know, you can have it kind of remember that. Again, if we can, we can just drag and drop some more fields into here. We can have it drag in a number, for instance. In the exercise, it has you type in number of fire rings at the campsite. Oh. And one nice thing you can do with numeric ones, and we'll do some of this afternoon, is you can set a minimum and maximum value, which is nice. I told you about that. Obviously you can't have a negative number of fire rings at a campsite, so minimum will be 0. Maximum, I mean, I don't know, what a reasonable maximum is, maybe 6. I've never been to a campsite that had more than 6 fire rings. Maybe you have. And again, like this one, you might want to check this one must be an integer, right? You can't have a decimal number of fire rings. You can't have a quarter of a fire ring. It's either there or it's not. And you see down here, it says, please put in an input number between 0 and 6. If I type, for instance, it won't let me do it here. I have to preview. If I click to preview it down here, it'll bring this up. If I, for instance, tried to type a 7, it shows me that red message, a number between 0 and 6. And I don't think it'll let me submit. Yep, it won't let me submit. Oh, now I just completely closed out of that. I think it should have saved though. Either way, we're down to 2 minutes left here. So I would like to kind of wrap up for this morning and give everyone an opportunity. Does anyone have any questions for me right now? Comments, thoughts, concerns, jokes? All right, everyone. So with that, I'll go ahead and close out the morning session. We will be back online starting at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, 2 hours from now. And I'm going to walk through just kind of showing you a little bit about how to work with this in AGOL just a little bit more, although we've seen some of that. And I want to just walk through some of these more advanced techniques with you guys for creating more advanced forms. So yeah, thank you all, everyone. Like I said, please feel free, if you'd like to, search through your email and find that PDF that I emailed you with the instructions for the step-by-step exercises, and feel free to work through those. If you have questions, feel free to bring those to the afternoon session. I'd be happy to answer things for you then. Yeah, so I will be back and see you all in about 2 hours. Thank you.